It's not when you fall that you are weak, and it's not when you rise that you are strong. True strength is defined by the path you choose afterward, the path no one sees, no one forces you to take, and no one rewards you immediately. It's just you, the silence, and a decision to keep going or to give up. The world today doesn't need to defeat you. It knows you'll defeat yourself if you keep quitting when tired, complaining when things don't go your way, or settling for less than you deserve, simply because it feels easier. What kills your potential isn't failure. It's the quiet compromises repeated every day. The moments you say, whatever, I guess this is good enough, or what can I do? The strong aren't defined by outcomes, but by their discipline to honor inner principles, even when no one's watching. Because every silent choice you make today is quietly shaping the man you become tomorrow. This isn't a feel-good speech. This is a wake-up call. If you keep living beneath what your soul knows to be true, a day will come when you won't hear that voice at all. And that, more than failure, is what should terrify you. If you've been tired, stuck, or quietly slipping into habits you once swore you'd overcome, this message is for you. Because what comes next will help you reclaim your edge, train your mind, and hold the line when the world pushes back. So stay with me. Subscribe if you haven't, and share below what you're choosing not to give up on. You are not alone in this path. Let's begin. 1. Quitting is a habit. So is perseverance. Every time you stop when it hurts, you're not just walking away from the task. You're teaching your mind that avoidance is easier than discipline. You're shaping a silent instinct to escape when pressure rises, to bow out when growth begins, to retreat whenever fear disguises itself as fatigue. And once that instinct becomes familiar, it becomes identity. That's why quitting isn't just a decision, it's a habit. A slow erosion of will, invisible at first, but fatal over time. You think it's just a missed day, a skipped step, a temporary pause. But it's more. It's a shift in who you're becoming when no one is watching. This is where Stoicism meets your reality. It doesn't offer comfort. It offers clarity. It doesn't tell you what you want to hear. It shows you what you've chosen to become. The Stoic knows that life will present difficulty, but difficulty is not the enemy. Your response is. Discipline is not about punishment, it's about alignment. It's choosing to remain rooted in your purpose when everything around you says to give up. It's about standing still when your feelings pull you in every direction. And it's not heroic. It's quiet, steady, boring. But that's where real strength is built. Under the weight of repetition, in the silence of small commitments no one applauds. You might be learning a new skill. You might feel behind. Maybe you're being laughed at, compared, ignored. But you must understand this. Skill follows effort, and effort means nothing without persistence. Your willpower is trained long before your talent is visible. Every time you return, despite doubt, despite judgment, you are forging something that outlasts praise, the refusal to betray yourself. You don't need to prove anything to anyone, but you do owe yourself consistency. You owe yourself the dignity of trying again. Not for the outcome, but for the person you become in the process. We often mistake quitting for wisdom. We say, this isn't for me, or it's not worth it. But many of these declarations are masks for discomfort. Rationalized surrender is still surrender. The Stoic sees through that illusion. He doesn't chase easy wins. He endures the hard ones, because he knows the battle isn't out there. It's within. It's in the voice that whispers, just stop. And the stronger voice answers, not today. There's something sacred about continuing. Not loudly, not dramatically, just continuing. Because in a world that constantly gives you permission to stop, continuing is rebellion. And not just rebellion for the sake of it, but a rebellion in service of your higher self. You are not your pain. You are not your doubt. You are not the noise around you. You are the quiet decision to keep going when everything in you wants to disappear. That's what Stoic perseverance looks like. Not strength without struggle, but strength formed inside it. You don't need more motivation. You need a reason. You need a vision of the man you want to be when no one's clapping, when progress is slow, and when even you are unsure. And you return to that vision daily, not because it's easy, but because it's yours. True freedom isn't doing what you feel like. True freedom is mastering your response to what you don't. That's what separates those who drift from those who rise. Not talent, not time, but persistence. So don't confuse rest with escape. Don't label hesitation as wisdom. Don't quit and call it peace. Peace comes from alignment, not avoidance. Alignment is earned by those who keep returning, again and again, until showing up is no longer a fight, but a reflex. Until perseverance becomes your nature. Until your silence becomes your strength. And when that happens, quitting won't feel like an option anymore. It will feel like a betrayal. Keep going. Because each time you do it, you're not just continuing a task, you're rewriting your future. One quiet, unshakable step at a time. 2. Complaining feels good now, but costs you later. There's a strange comfort in complaining. It gives you something to say when things don't go your way. It makes you feel less alone in your struggle and less responsible for the weight you're carrying. But that comfort is shallow. It soothes the ego while slowly poisoning your resilience. Every time you choose to vent instead of act, blame instead of adapt, you trade your power for momentary relief. And once that trade becomes familiar, it becomes addictive. Because the more you complain, the more powerless you become. And the more powerless you feel, the more you complain. That's how strength is lost. Not through trauma, but through repetition. What the Stoics understood, and what we so easily forget, is that every complaint is a decision. A decision to relieve pain, to stay inside the wound instead of moving through it, to narrate suffering rather than transform it. And the longer you stay in that place, the harder it is to see clearly. You begin to believe that your struggle is special. No one could possibly understand it. Those circumstances owe you better. But the Stoic doesn't live in that illusion. He doesn't expect the world to be fair. He expects himself to be strong. There was a time I fell into that trap myself. I had lost a major opportunity, something I had worked months for. And instead of learning from it, I spent weeks explaining it away, to friends, to strangers, to myself. They just didn't get it. The system's broken. I deserved more. It felt good to say it. It felt righteous. But deep down, I knew I was lying. Not about the circumstances, but about what they meant. I wasn't speaking to gain insight. I was speaking to avoid pain, to hide from the fact that I had things I could have done better, that there was still work to be done, and that no amount of justification would bring that moment back. What I needed wasn't sympathy. It was stillness. What I needed wasn't another retelling. It was responsibility. That's what Stoicism demands. Not perfection, not passivity, but ownership. When something breaks, you fix what you can. When something hurts, you feel it, and then move forward. You don't make it your identity. You don't wear it like armor. Complaining does something far more dangerous than we think. It keeps the pain alive. You experience the injury once in reality and then 100 more times in your mind through retelling. And every retelling makes the scar deeper. But silence, Stoic silence, isn't weakness. It's the refusal to be defined by your wounds. It's the quiet decision to rise without applause, to act without excuse, to carry your struggle like weight training, not self-pity. So the next time life cuts deep, say less. Do more. Resist the urge to narrate every blow. Not because you're hiding the pain, but because you respect it. You don't owe the world your complaints. You owe yourself your evolution. And growth doesn't happen when you keep replaying what hurt you. Growth happens when you decide that what happened is no longer allowed to shape who you are becoming. You can't build strength on top of bitterness. You can't create clarity through constant rumination. And you cannot become the person you're meant to be while anchoring yourself to the past with every sentence you speak. Let go of the story. Hold on to the standard. While complaining may win your attention, it will cost you your direction. And in the quiet moments when no one's listening, that's the only thing that truly matters. Choose the path forward, not the echo behind. Because freedom doesn't come when the pain disappears. It comes when you stop giving it your voice. 3. Settling quietly destroys your potential. You don't need to fail spectacularly to lose your fire. Sometimes all it takes is settling, just a little, every single day. You stop chasing improvement. You stop raising the bar, not because you're broken, not because you've given up, but because you've quietly accepted that this is good enough. And that silent surrender, repeated over time, is far more dangerous than any loud defeat. Because it doesn't shock you into reflection. It lulls you into stillness. Into a life that looks fine on the surface but feels hollow underneath. When you settle, you aren't just choosing a smaller life, you're choosing to turn away from the one you could have built. You're choosing comfort over courage, familiarity over freedom. But comfort, when unexamined, becomes a cage. It convinces you that ambition is for someone else, that striving is a young man's game, that where you are is where you'll always be. And you begin to confuse stillness with peace, when in fact it's just inertia dressed as contentment. The Stoics never asked you to chase fame, fortune, or applause, but they did ask you to chase alignment, to demand more from yourself, not for status, but for the soul. Because mediocrity isn't just an external condition, it's an internal betrayal. The danger with settling is that it hides in reason. You tell yourself you're being practical, grounded, mature. You've learned to let go. But letting go of what? Dreams? Growth? The fire you once had? There's a difference between surrendering control and surrendering the pursuit of your potential. The former is wisdom, the latter is resignation. And if you aren't careful, you won't notice the moment when you stop showing up with your full self. You'll just wake up one day, look in the mirror, and realize you haven't truly challenged yourself in years. The Stoic doesn't seek chaos, but he does seek resistance. He walks toward friction because that's where his strength is revealed. Settling avoids that friction. It softens your edge. It dulls your instinct to fight for better. Not because you're incapable, but because you've grown too used to quieting your desire for more. But desire, in its purest form, isn't greed. Its purpose is to express itself. It's your inner voice calling you forward. And every time you ignore it, every time you tell it later, it fades until one day it's gone. Not because it wasn't real, but because you stopped listening. You might be in a job that feels stable, a routine that feels manageable, a rhythm that doesn't hurt, but doesn't move you either. You might even be telling yourself that gratitude means staying where you are. But gratitude is not stagnation. Gratitude is the foundation from which you build, not the ceiling you accept. The Stoic is grateful, but he is never complacent. He doesn't settle because he knows this life, this one short, fragile life, is too sacred to waste sleepwalking through. So ask yourself honestly, are you living fully or just maintaining? Are you becoming stronger, clearer, more disciplined, or just surviving on autopilot? Because there's nothing noble about a life half-lived. There's nothing stoic about hiding behind comfort when the discomfort of growth is what's calling your name. Greatness isn't found in one big act of courage. It's found in the refusal to shrink quietly, in the choice to show up again even when no one is watching, even when no one expects more from you. Especially then. You don't have to burn everything down to start again. You just have to stop accepting less clarity, less alignment, less strength. Every time you choose to re-engage, even in small ways, you reignite the fire. And that flame, no matter how small, is enough. Enough to move forward, enough to break through, enough to remind you that you were never meant to settle. You were meant to rise, in silence, in stillness, in full command of who you are and who you refuse to stop becoming. For discipline is the armor you build in private. Discipline is not something you wear for others to admire. It's not the morning run posted on social media or the color-coded calendar you show off to look organized. Real discipline is silent, invisible. It's the armor you build when no one is watching, because one day everything will fall apart. And on that day, you won't have time to prepare. You'll only have what you've already trained. When chaos comes, you will not rise to the occasion. You will fall to your level of preparation, and the only thing standing between you and collapse will be your habits. This is where the Stoics lived, in the quiet, in the small, repeated acts of integrity. Not because they are easy, but because they are necessary. Discipline isn't about control, it's about resilience. It's about giving yourself structure when life offers you none. It's about showing up not because you feel like it, but because you made a vow to yourself, and that vow is sacred. And like all sacred things, it is kept in silence. True strength doesn't need an audience, it just needs consistency. I remember a man I met years ago, blue-collar worker, 2 kids, long shifts, small house. But every morning without fail, he'd be out walking before the sun rose. Not because someone told him to, not because he had something to prove, but because life had knocked him down once, bad. Lost his job, lost his sense of control. And the only thing that got him back up was the routine he had built before the storm. That walk, that simple act of discipline, was the first thing he returned to after hitting rock bottom. And it gave him a foundation, something he could trust when everything else fell away. That's what discipline really is, not a display, but a defense. We often wait until everything falls apart to wish we had been stronger. But strength is not something you suddenly access. It's something you deposit into every single day, like a savings account you can only draw from in crisis. Every time you wake up early, delay gratification, control your response, or follow through on a promise, you're building credit. And when life finally tests you, and it will, you'll either have enough to stand or you won't. The Stoics knew this. They trained their minds the way warriors train their bodies, quietly, daily, without praise. Discipline may look like a restriction to the outside world, but inside it creates freedom. Freedom from chaos, freedom from regret, freedom from being pulled in every direction by mood, emotion, distraction, and desire. The man without discipline is a slave to whatever he feels in the moment. The man with it may still feel deeply, but he responds with intention, not reaction. He doesn't wait for ideal conditions. He creates rhythm out of resistance. He holds himself accountable, not because someone is watching, but because he knows the world rarely warns you when it's about to demand more from you. If you're building habits only for good days, you're not building armor, you're building decoration. Stoic strength begins in adversity, but it's maintained in routine. You can't predict the next storm, but you can prepare for it. You do that by building daily rituals that align you with your values. And when it gets dark, when things stop making sense, when your motivation leaves, you don't. You stay, you endure, you return to the rhythm. That is the Stoics' way. And that is the kind of discipline no failure can break. So the question is not whether discipline is useful. It's whether you'll have enough of it when the easy life ends. Because it will. The job will change, the relationships will shift, the loss will come. And when it does, the only thing left to catch you will be what you've already built. Not in front of others. Not when it's easy, but now. Quietly, repeatedly, day after day. Until you don't need to think about being strong because you've already become it. 5. Resilience isn't loud. It's the decision to continue. Resilience doesn't roar. It doesn't demand recognition. It doesn't appear with banners or grand speeches. It shows up quietly, often unnoticed, in the middle of ordinary days when everything feels heavier than it should. You might be tired. You might be in the middle of a battle no one sees. But if you're still breathing, still rising, still doing one more small right thing, then you're stronger than most will ever understand. Because resilience isn't about winning, it's about continuing. And sometimes that's more than enough. The modern world celebrates loud victories and fast results. But the Stoic walks a different path, one paved not with outcomes but with endurance. What truly builds strength is not the breakthrough, but the silent decision to not give up. It's the choice to stand again after a long night, to show up again even when nothing has changed, to hold your principles steady when the pressure says compromise would be easier. That choice, repeated in silence, becomes who you are, not in your words, but in your response. Most people wait until they feel strong enough to act, but resilience doesn't wait for motivation. It moves without applause. It acts without perfect conditions. It lives in the space between effort and exhaustion, when no one is asking you to keep going, but you do it anyway. And the beauty of it is this: no one can measure your fight, but you. You're the only one who knows how much it costs to keep going. You're the only one who can feel the weight of each small step. That's why resilience is deeply personal, and why it doesn't need to be broadcast to be real. The Stoics believed in emotional mastery, not emotional denial. They didn't pretend hardship wasn't hard. They just refused to be controlled by it. They embraced the discomfort, not because they enjoyed it, but because they saw it as a forge. Each hardship was a chance to shape something sharper, calmer, and more unshakable within. So, when you're standing in the middle of something difficult and your mind starts to spiral, don't try to silence the noise by force. Just return to the next right step. Focus on the process. That's where Stoic resilience begins. Not in controlling everything, but in refusing to quit when control is gone. Sometimes resilience is waking up with less hope than yesterday, but still choosing to try. Sometimes it's making a kind decision when bitterness feels justified. Sometimes it's simply showing restraint when your emotions want to explode. It's not that you've become invincible, it's that you've trained yourself to respond, not react. That's the Stoic difference. It's not about pretending to be fine. It's about being grounded enough to move through pain without losing yourself in it. There's a quiet kind of pride that grows in this process. Not arrogance, but dignity. The kind of dignity that comes from knowing you didn't fold, that you kept walking forward with blistered feet and no cheering crowd, that you did the thing no one will ever know you did. And that, right there, is where real confidence is born. Not from dominance, but from consistency. Not from power over others, but from power over self. So if today feels like too much, if you're dragging yourself through the motions, if progress feels invisible, don't measure your worth by the results. Measure it by your ability to show up anyway. Even a small act done with full heart is a declaration that you're not finished yet, that you still believe this moment matters, that your values still hold, even in the dark. And in the long run, that quiet decision to continue may be the most powerful thing you ever do. Because resilience isn't something you show, it's something you live. And if you're still here, still moving, still willing to try again, then you haven't lost. You've already proven something most people never will. Not with noise, not with pride, but with the decision to rise, one silent step at a time. 6. The present moment is where strength is forged. You don't change your life tomorrow. You don't fix the past by rewinding it. You don't become stronger by just imagining the future. Everything happens here, now, this breath, this choice, this moment. When you're worrying about next week or grieving over yesterday, you've already lost the one tool that can actually reshape your reality right now. And the truth is, you don't need to have everything figured out. You just need to decide what you're going to do in the next 5 minutes. Because that's all the Stoics ever needed to take control. Presence, intention, and the courage to act in the moment. We live in a world constantly pulling our minds forward and backward. Regret becomes a loop. Anxiety becomes a trap. And while your body is still here, your focus is somewhere else, arguing with what's already happened or trying to outthink a future that hasn't come. But the Stoic doesn't fight ghosts. He anchors himself in the only place strength can grow, the present. Because the present is where you meet your fear, not where you run from it. It's where you make the hard choice, take the next breath, and hold the line, no matter how small the step. Strength isn't a built-in fantasy. It's built through action, under pressure, in real time. And here's the thing, the present doesn't need to be perfect. You don't need silence, motivation, or clarity. You don't need to feel like it. You just need to do something now that moves you forward. The mind will always try to delay until conditions are just right. But life doesn't wait for perfection. It rewards those who show up when things are messy, who takes one deliberate action even while doubting. That's where transformation begins, not in control, but in participation. If your thoughts are racing, if your emotions are clouded, return to this moment. Ground yourself in what's here, not what could have been, not what might come, but what is. The Stoic doesn't chase peace. He returns to it by stopping the mental noise and asking a simple question. What can I do now that's within my control? Sometimes the answer is as simple as taking a deep breath. Sometimes it's choosing not to react. Sometimes it's standing up when staying down feels easier. These small moments repeated become resilience. They become characters. Because the man who learns to act in the now, who builds the habit of presence, becomes unshakable. Not because life gets easier, but because he no longer scatters his energy across 100 imagined outcomes. He learns to meet reality head-on, to respond with clarity instead of fear, to move with purpose even when outcomes are unclear. That kind of presence is power. It can't be bought, it can't be given. It must be trained moment by moment in the ordinary and the difficult. So if you're overwhelmed, if you feel stuck, if your mind is lost in the fog of past mistakes or future problems, pause, breathe, look around, and take one honest step. Not tomorrow, not next week, but now. Show up fully, even if it's messy, even if it's small, because in that small moment of action, something inside you begins to shift. Doubt quiets, fear retreats, and you remember, your power has never lived in planning, it has always lived in the present. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius wrote not as an emperor removed from suffering, but as a man fighting his own battles in silence. He returned again and again to now. Because he knew that when the moment is fully lived, strength is forged, even in weakness. You don't need hours. You don't need certainty. You just need 5 honest minutes. 5 minutes of presence, 5 minutes of truth. And in those 5 minutes you begin the kind of change that lasts. Not loud, not perfect. Just real, just now. 7. Gratitude is the quiet rebellion against self-pity. When the weight of everything becomes too much to carry, your instinct might be to fix the world, to chase the solution, to win back control. But sometimes that's not what saves you. Sometimes what holds you together is smaller, quieter. It's not a breakthrough, a plan, or a miracle. It's the decision to pause, breathe, and write down 3 things you still have, without posting it, without explaining it, just for you. Because gratitude, in its most powerful form, is silent. And in the Stoics' world, that silence is strength. When life turns its back on you, it's easy to believe you're the victim. Easy to feel like everything is unfair, like no one understands, like effort isn't worth it. And in those moments, self-pity begins to whisper. It tells you to stop trying, to withdraw, to justify your anger. It makes you feel seen, but it also makes you small. The Stoic doesn't fight this voice by shouting over it. He simply refuses to feed it, and he does that through one subtle, radical act. Gratitude. Not the kind of gratitude that ignores pain, not the kind that fakes optimism, but the kind that coexists with disappointment and still chooses to name what remains. That kind of gratitude doesn't numb your struggle. It reframes it. It helps you see that hardship and blessings don't cancel each other out. They sit side by side. And when you acknowledge the good, even in brokenness, you prove to yourself that your spirit hasn't bowed to circumstance. Gratitude is not a reaction. It's a discipline. It doesn't wait for things to get better. It chooses to recognize what's still sacred amid the wreckage. When you write down what you're thankful for, quietly, sincerely, you shift the way your mind interacts with the world. You interrupt the loop of lack. You stop obsessing over what's missing and begin grounding yourself in what's present. And in that pause, your perspective expands, your resilience sharpens, your soul steadies. The Stoics taught that we cannot control external events, but we can control how we relate to them. Gratitude is one of the clearest ways to do that. It creates space between the event and your reaction. It reminds you that life is not just about what happens, but what you choose to do with it. When things fall apart, the one who survives intact isn't the strongest in appearance. It's the one who remembers what still matters, what still belongs to them, what no storm can take. And the more consistently you practice it, the more powerful it becomes. Gratitude doesn't remove the burden, but it gives you something solid to stand on while you carry it. It's the foundation beneath your fatigue, the stillness beneath your doubt. When others spiral, gratitude grounds you. When the world screams scarcity, gratitude whispers sufficiency. Not because you have it all, but because you're willing to see what you still have as enough for now. So when the pressure builds and your emotions rise, don't rush to repair the entire world. Don't chase perfection. Don't drown in your pain. Start smaller, slower, wiser. Write down 3 things that are still here. Maybe it's your breath. Maybe it's someone you love. Maybe it's the fact that, despite everything, you're still standing. That act may seem small, but it's not. It's a line drawn in the sand, a quiet refusal to be ruled by despair. A signal to your mind that you're still in control of something, that you still have the power to choose perspective. And with that choice, you reclaim your footing. Because in the end, gratitude is not decoration, it's defiance. It's how the Stoic walks through storms and still sees light. It's how you remember who you are when the world tries to make you forget. It's not loud and it doesn't need to be. Its power lies in how it anchors you, in silence, in truth, and in the unshakable strength of still being thankful. Even here, even now. What you've just heard is not theory, it's a path. A quiet, disciplined way of living that doesn't depend on perfect timing, external applause, or easy days. It's built in the silence, in the repetition, in the daily decisions no one else will ever see. Never quitting, never complaining, never settling. These aren't slogans. They are pillars. And when practiced with intention, they will reshape your life from the inside out. Every moment is an opportunity to return, to realign, to recommit. You don't need a full plan to start. You need a reason. And if that reason is simply to become a stronger, calmer, more resilient version of yourself, then you already have all the motivation you need. Don't wait for the world to test you to begin building your mental toughness. Train now. Show up now. Use the next 5 minutes to apply one truth from today's message. Write it down. Act on it. Reflect on it. Because Stoicism is not a performance. It's a practice. And that practice becomes your edge when everything else falls apart. So if something from this message stayed with you, if even one part made you stop and reflect, write it below. Share your story, your struggle, your breakthrough. Someone out there might need it just as much as you did. And you might find you're not walking this path alone. You never were. You were just becoming someone strong enough to walk it with purpose.